Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an extended overview of Week 5, malicious code, social engineering, and protecting information assets. We are going to decode a really fascinating, high-stakes dichotomy here. On one side, you have the relentless, ever-evolving world of cyber attacks, and on the other, the structured corporate defenses designed to stop them cold. We're going to break down these complex threat vectors and map out exactly how modern organizations defend their digital turf. Let's get right into it. So, I want to kick things off with a question for you. Think about this for a second. What is the absolute weakest link in any security system? Does the real fundamental vulnerability in a secure network lie in some complex software code, maybe outdated hardware, or is it the human being sitting at the keyboard? Keep that in the back of your mind as we go, because the answer might actually surprise you once we look at how today's attackers really operate. All right, let's set the baseline stakes for cybersecurity. Pretty much every defensive strategy out there revolves around what we call the CIA triad. Now, no, we're not talking about the intelligence agency here. It stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are basically the three pillars of information security. Confidentiality means keeping sensitive stuff, like health records or trade secrets, away from unauthorized eyes. Integrity ensures that this information stays accurate and doesn't get quietly altered by malicious actors. And finally, availability guarantees that the people who are actually supposed to access the systems can get to them when they need them. Protecting these three elements is literally non-negotiable for any organization. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Anatomy of technical attacks. 2. Hacking the human mind. 3. The credential theft bridge. 4. Classifying information assets. And 5. Enforcing least privilege. Section 1. Anatomy of technical attacks. Exploiting the digital vault. Okay, so the absolute bedrock of technical attacks is malware. This is malicious software explicitly designed to harm or exploit a system. But malware is a really broad umbrella. Underneath it, you've got viruses, which physically attach themselves to legitimate programs and spread only when you actually run them. Then you have worms, which are honestly even more insidious because they're self-replicating. They just spread across networks without any human intervention at all. And then, of course, we have Trojans. These masquerade as legitimate, useful software just to trick you into installing them, only to drop a destructive payload or quietly open a backdoor once they're inside. But attackers don't just stop at malware. They heavily target vulnerabilities in the web apps we use every single day. A prime example of this is cross-site scripting, or XSS for short. The stark reality here is that an attacker can literally turn a trusted application interface into a weapon against its own users. Basically, if a website fails to properly validate the data a user inputs, an attacker can inject malicious JavaScript straight into that web page. So when another totally unsuspecting user visits the page, their browser executes that script. And just like that, the attacker can steal their session cookies or completely hijack their account. Take a look at this raw code. These are actual XSS vulnerability scripts targeting Apache Tomcat servers. You can clearly see the script tags just injected right into the URLs and file paths. By forcing the server to echo these inputs back to the user, the attacker totally bypasses the browser's security boundaries. It's a pretty brilliant, albeit completely malicious, way of exploiting the fundamental trust that a browser has for a server. Section 2. Hacking the human mind, the psychology of a breach. So shifting gears here, the cornerstone of social engineering is the classic phishing hook. Social engineering is really just the dark art of manipulating people into divulging confidential info or performing actions that compromise security. I mean, why spend weeks trying to break through a complex firewall if you can just trick an employee into handing over the keys, right? They masquerade as trusted entities, maybe your bank, your IT department, or even your boss, just to deploy this deceptive lure. And phishing has evolved so much from those old poorly spelled spam emails. Today, the variants are highly specialized. We've got spear phishing, which uses gathered intelligence to craft highly tailored messages targeting specific individuals. Then there's whaling, which aims specifically at high-profile executives, the whales of the company, usually trying to initiate unauthorized financial transfers. And it's definitely not just email anymore. Phishing uses voice and phone calls, while smishing uses SMS text messages, completely exploiting that natural sense of urgency we associate with a text alert buzzing on our phones. Let's contrast two other really fascinating social engineering vectors: baiting versus pretexting. Baiting actually bridges the physical and digital domains. An attacker might literally drop an infected USB drive labeled Executive Salary Review right in the company parking lot. They are relying entirely on sheer human curiosity to bypass physical air gaps when some employee inevitably picks it up and plugs it in. Pretexting, on the other hand, relies purely on psychological manipulation. The attacker creates a highly fabricated scenario, a pretext, like, say, pretending to be an external auditor who needs immediate compliance data. They use authority and urgency to force the target into cooperating. Section 3. The credential theft bridge, from human error to systemic compromise. Okay, so successful social engineering almost inevitably leads to one thing: the theft of credentials. And this is crucial. Stolen usernames and passwords act as the ultimate keys to the kingdom. If an attacker has your credentials, they don't need to hack in, they just log in. They get these through methods like keylogging, which quietly records every single keystroke you make, or credential dumping, where they extract hash passwords from a system they've already breached. And then there's credential stuffing, which is incredibly common. Attackers basically take massive lists of usernames and passwords from a data breach at one company and use automated tools to just stuff those credentials into hundreds of other websites. They're betting on the fact that, let's be honest, human beings endlessly reuse their passwords across different accounts. Section 4. Classifying information assets. Knowing what to protect. So before an organization can even begin to defend itself against all of this, it has to build a formal corporate data classification framework, because security is ultimately about managing risk based on business value. Not all data is created equal, right? Public data, like marketing materials, obviously needs zero protection from disclosure. Internal data handles your routine operations, but as we move up to confidential and secret or restricted data, things like intellectual property, health records, or payment cards, the security controls have to scale up drastically. We're talking strong encryption and very rigid access limitations. Section 5. Enforcing least privilege, minimizing the blast radius. Take a look at these real-world audit findings. Governmental audits consistently reveal agencies completely failing to manage privileged accounts, specifically administrator accounts with weak passwords. And this proves exactly why restricting administrative access is so absolutely vital. Privileged accounts hold the power to alter entire systems. If an attacker gains access to an overprivileged account through, say, a phishing email or credential stuffing, the entire network is exposed to a catastrophic breach. Honestly, without centralized privilege management, the whole system is fundamentally broken from the start. So how do we actually fix this? We step through the 4 pillars of the principle of least privilege. First up, the need-to-know basis. You only get access to data that is strictly required for your specific job. That's it. Second, minimal privileges. You're granted the lowest possible level of system permissions. You don't need admin rights to your laptop if you literally just need to run a web browser. Third, segregation of duties. Critical tasks are split up so no single user can execute a high-risk action end-to-end without some oversight. And fourth, regular access reviews. Constantly auditing these permissions to make sure they still make sense for a person's current role. These 4 pillars working together systematically shrink your organization's attack surface. If we were to boil all of this down to a single core philosophy, it's the mantra of zero trust architecture. Never trust, always verify. You basically have to operate under the assumption that a breach has already happened, or that a user might already be compromised. Cybersecurity isn't just a firewall you set up once and then forget about. It is a continuously managed state. Every single access request, whether it's coming from inside or outside the network, absolutely must be authenticated and authorized. I want to leave you with a provocative thought, something to help evaluate your own digital footprint. Think about the systems you log into every day for work. Does your own access truly pass the need-to-know test? Or do you have permissions and access to things you probably haven't used in years? Understanding your own footprint is the very first step toward building resilient structural defenses. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious and stay secure.